Welcome everyone. Today we start a new teaching unit. It's called Population Dynamics. Out of the book is Chapter 9, and you need to read that so that you can get a full view of everything that we're going to be talking about today. So let's get started. Population dynamics is all about how man interacts with his environment in terms of his growth and his development. And one of the most basic things that you're going to have to do as you read the chapter is be able to discern and figure out what kind of population profile you're given. For instance, these are the three of the basic one. The one on the far left-hand side is called the rapid growth model, and Kenya is a good example of that. It tends to be kind of a pre-industrial model. It's more Christmas tree shape. Most of the weight of this is down at the bottom and not at the top. So let's talk a little bit about Kenya first. Kenya is a country that has most of its population under the age of 20. As you age in that particular society, because of health, poor sanitation, poor food quality, poor water supply, people don't live much after 40 years old. As you can see in that graph, from 30 all the way to 80, there's a rapid decline in the human population in those kinds of countries. They tend to be pre-industrial. The other kind of thing about those kind of countries is they need workers. They need people to make sure that their family can make it to the next generation, so they have lots of children. Those children work at a very young age and provide for the families and any kind of businesses as well. It's part of their society. It's part of what they have to do to survive. Primarily because of that, you get a high birth rate, but also a high death rate. So you don't see a whole lot of growth. A lot of scientists have said that this is how most of the world was until about 10,000 years ago. And you're talking about a growth rate of less than 1%. We look in the middle of this picture, you'll see that the middle one is the United States. It's a good example of what we call a very slow growth type of situation. You're going to see that at both ends are going to be kind of similar, or they're going to be a particular age group that's maybe bigger than the others. In this particular case, right in the middle are the baby boomers, and then their generation of kids is below them. So it's more the same up and down. It's kind of more columnar or rectangular or boxy. And in this particular model, you'll see, for instance, the improvements of health care. Also, you're going to see more than, I guess, sustainable types of agriculture. You're going to see maybe big corporation types of agriculture. You're going to also see lots of technology improvements in education. But if you also take a look in this particular one, the top end is relatively heavy. So we have elderly people living longer. We go into the one on the far right is negative or zero growth. Germany, Japan are all part of those kinds of countries where they see a decrease in the amount of young people, and most of the elderly people are in that category. There's more elderly and older and middle-aged people than there are young people. So those are our three kinds: the Christmas tree, the columnar, and then we have more of the kind of the cup shape. So those are the three kinds of profiles. Quick review. Remember, the rapid growth one is the Christmas tree shape, like Kenya. Slow growth, like the United States, is more kind of boxy. And then the last one, the one that's in decline, the population rate is in decline, like a zero population, things like Germany, and it's more cup shape in its appearance. Now let's take a look at the United States profile. Basically a 50-year period from 1960 to 2010. Three things that I want you to look at. First of all, where the baby boomers are, the impact of World War II, and then compare 0 to 9 years to 69 and plus years. Let's look at the 1960 one first. If you look at the 1960 profile, you notice basically from age 30 on up, it looks like a triangle, almost like a Christmas tree. And at that time, it was a developing country, and we were growing very, very rapidly. And so our Christmas tree was growing more and more each particular generation. There's still at the top, obviously you can see that we started to rapidly lose some of our elderly around the age of 80. But then it was something kind of unique happened. If you'll notice that from about anything from 20 20 years old and younger, it started to grow because the baby boomers were starting to have children, and they were having them in record numbers. Then if you look in 2010, those baby boomers are now starting to move into their middle ages, and you can see that there's this kind of a large increase right in the middle of the graph. Those are the baby boomers. Those are the ones that were born in the 1950s and 60s, and you can see that they're also having children, but not at the rate that their folks raised them. So you can see that it's becoming more and more even as time goes on. So notice the shape there. Let's take a look at another country that is developing and will very soon be a developed country, and that's China. The big graph kind of in the middle and to the left, you'll notice that in the year 2000, it was very much kind of a Christmas tree shape. But it was a big Christmas tree, kind of like the United States. Because of the amount of people in China, what's going on in around 2000 is they're starting to get health care. They're cleaning up their water. They are providing good jobs that pay well. So now, as we can see in 2000, we project 2050, we're going to have growth in all sectors of the population. And it's becoming this very large population that's going to have lots of needs throughout the entire population. You can see that the elderly in particular are going to grow at a much faster rate because if you look down at 2000, they had a huge base, a huge foundation to grow. So it's going to be a developed country by 2050, probably sooner than that. And as you can see, they're going to have lots of issues as far as providing electricity, providing clean water, quality food, health care. And they're going to obviously take a look at what happens in the environment as well. Right now, the Three Gorges project is going full steam, has displaced lots of folks. There wasn't a whole lot of study as far as what it would do to the environment. They are burning very poor kinds of coal that really puts a lot of particulate matter in. So we're seeing a lot of brownout days and those kinds of things that are going to have a huge impact on how we're going to view China in the future environmentally. Then on the right-hand side, here's an example of Japan. Very little growth from 2000 to 2050. As far as jobs and economic growth, that's going to be taking a toll that Japan and other countries like Japan are going to have to deal with. And then just a quick review. Those kinds of implications, once you look at the profiles, will tell us things like what's going to happen for health care as we have an elderly population. Also, as that elderly population grows, what are some other cultural kinds of problems or solutions they're going to have? And of course, to grow economically, if you don't have the base of people to fill the jobs and do the infrastructure work, what's going to happen to your particular society? Well, in 1929, a gentleman by the name of Warren Thompson proposed this theory of a demographic transition model that has 4 distinct phases. Phase 1 is pre-industrial. It's subsistence kind of living from basically hunting and gathering. Very primitive in its stability. It has a very high birth rate, but also has a very high death rate as well. Typically, you don't have any health care here. You also have hygiene problems, not a steady, clean drinking supply, and the food supply is also limited as well. And so you don't see a lot of growth in that region, primarily because even though you have a high birth rate, also there's a high death rate that goes along with it, so very little growth. As we go to phase 2, we're going to be becoming a little bit more industrialized. Countries are beginning to do manufacturing, also mechanizing their agriculture. But the big reason it's declining is because of the death rate is declining, because of health care and advances in medicine and hygiene and a good, sturdy, consistent food supply. We begin to see the death rate plummeting. That's phase 2. So you go to phase 3, you're going to be seeing some major changes. It's going to be more urban type of settings, so people are moving from the country into large urban settings. And as they do that, the pay increases, the opportunity for them to work increases. And as they do that, females also get much more educated. Their standing in the community is much higher. And because of that, fewer and fewer women are staying home to raise children. Excuse me. And because of that, we're beginning to see that the replacement rate begins to drop. So then we move into phase 4. That is an area where we would be considered developed. And we're having all different kinds of technologies that are making our jobs and lives a lot easier. We're also kind of revisiting our culture, and the culture is beginning to change. It's highly urbanized, very technological. Education is important. And of course, in some particular instances, the fertility rate is dropping because we're not getting the replacement rate. And this is what we call modern stability. But just recently, a lot of the social scientists believe that there's 2 other kinds of phases. One has to do with as a population ages. There are some concerns with health care. And then, of course, stage 6 would primarily be the stage where we actually begin to see, because in 2009 there was a report in a magazine article called Nature, and the social scientists began to believe that we're beginning to see in some of these highly developed countries that the fertility rates begin to spike again. So those 2 are just been postulated as 2 other theory or 2 other stages, but it hasn't been terribly confirmed. For the most part, as you can see in this cup of coffee, we have basically 4 stages: one with high birth rates and high death rates, one that has improved food and health, and in particular, and childhood mortality is improved. I mean, there's less children dying. So we have an increase in the population. Urbanization in stage 3. And then, of course, low birth rates and low death rates in stage 4. And, of course, become developed in that area. So that's what Chapter 9 is about, the population dynamics and how populations are graphed and followed, and what the implications are, not only financially, but most importantly, environmentally. So we're going to be out in the lab for the next couple of days, making our own profiles from some of the research that you guys do. Please read Chapter 9, because it does get a little bit more complicated. There'll be a lot of math in this chapter, and it's relatively simple math, but it at least gives you an opportunity to see where we're going with this chapter. So we'll see you later. Thanks. Bye.